Hello everybody, welcome to the Newman Bond. I'm Jack Schaefer. I work in the digital marketing department here at Newman University, and James is a colleague and friend of mine, a videographer and a photographer here at the university. And we're gonna talk about photography and light painting and then do some light painting at the end. So very exciting stuff. James, would you like to introduce yourself to those students or those viewers that may not know too much about you?
Sure. My name is James Sanny. I've been at Newman for about 5 years now. I'm also a non-traditional student alum, so I've been here for quite a while over the years. I'm the videographer, as Jack mentioned, for the campus, so you'll see me at different events pointing a camera in your face, and I try not to be too intrusive, but if you want to throw a smile my way, I would definitely appreciate that. Some of my favorite events to cover here on campus are like the theater events, the musicals, things like that, and I also really love homecoming because there's a lot of energy. So it's a fun job. I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome. And obviously you do videography and you're great at editing, but I know a love of yours is photography. So would you like to tell us a little bit more about how you got into that becoming one of your interests?
Sure. Yeah. Probably right around before I got into high school, my dad signed us up for a photography class, and back then it was pretty much film. I think digital had hit the market and it was terrible. But he always carried a film camera around when I was growing up, so I thought this would be cool. It's something that he enjoys, maybe I'll enjoy it too. So we took the class over the summer. I went out just taking pictures of trees and, old fences, the same stuff that everybody takes pictures of when they get a camera and they think, oh, I'm gonna be an artist. But it was a lot of fun. We mostly did black and white at that point, but when it got time to actually develop the film in a darkroom, I had no interest in doing that.
Oh, really?
It was a lot of work. It did not smell very good, and it's just thinking about we didn't have a darkroom in our house, and developing roll after roll of film is pretty expensive. So I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. The instant gratification was not yet a thing.
Sure.
Unless you bought a Polaroid camera. So.
Yeah, of course. Did you have a Polaroid camera? Did you have access to
I always
one?
wanted one. No, my parents weren't going to do that. They said the film was way too expensive.
Oh, sure. Gotcha. So how did your photography evolve over time? Would you like to get into that? You took those kind of basic pictures of the trees and nature and think you're an expert photographer, but how did you get into, I know you like taking pictures of cars, how did you evolve your photography skills?
Sure. I started to get back into it again more heavily once digital, there were more advances in digital photography, so the cameras looked more like the film cameras, interchangeable lenses and things like that. And so I borrowed a really nice camera from a friend, and I thought, I'm going to do this is going to be fun. And then I went on a trip to Dallas with a couple other friends, and we got to this hotel, and I was wearing the camera, and the people in the lobby were acting like I was important, or the people I was with were important, because why would you have this camera? And I thought, this could be cool. Maybe I'll just get into photography because it'll make me somebody. It's not the right reason to do that, but that was kind of the ego boost. I thought, I'm going to try this. So, and it didn't, it didn't make me anybody, but it did kind of start to open doors. People would start inviting you to things when they saw you had a nice camera. And so I started going to different parties, music events and things like that here in Wichita. I became pretty close friends with some of the DJs in town, and that opened doors to getting photos that I wouldn't normally be able to get.
Sure.
So I had a lot of fun with that. Along that ride, I met my wife. She was also kind of interested in photography. So we bought a second camera, and a friend of ours said, hey, would you shoot our wedding? We don't have any money, but we'd love for somebody to come at least take a few pictures. And my wife was like, absolutely, let's do it. So we went along and we did that, and then we ended up shooting weddings for 10 years together as a team. She'd follow the bride's side, I'd follow the groom's side. She is a teacher. She's really good with people. So she kind of had that soft skills side of things with the business. I'm more technical, so I learned a lot about lighting and setting things up, tech, all of that, just to kind of even us out. So we made a really good team. We had a lot of fun. Then we started having kids, and it was a lot more work to edit those photos, a lot more expensive to have people watch the kids while we were gone. And because my dad was the one that kind of got me into photography originally, he was always big into cars, and I thought, I do like cars. Maybe I could take pictures of cars. And so I gave it a shot, met a few friends, took some pictures, and realized it's actually a lot of fun. And you can't really mess that up. If you miss a shot at a wedding, it's a really big deal.
Sure.
But with cars, you can take the shot over and over and over again. So less stressful, little more creativity and fun. So that's kind of how I went through my whole journey and got to cars.
Gotcha. And then how did you get into video work? Did you ever do video work for weddings, or was that strictly just photography?
I did one alongside being like the first shooter of a wedding, a friend's wedding. I also gathered some video clips and mic'd them during their vows of the ceremony and put together a kind of a short little 3.5-minute supercut of their wedding just as a gift to them. They knew I was doing it, but I was interested to see if I could, and it turned out pretty cool. It was kind of a nice little highlight reel of their day, but then I realized like I would rather do photo work. It is less stressful than video work, I feel like, with a wedding, because there's so much to capture during the day.
Sure.
And it, you know, a lot of people really want every moment, every second of that day. It's a long day. And so with photos, it was just a little bit easier because, you know, you get a shot of that event and you can move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. With video, it's, you know, frame after frame after frame. So I didn't really do a whole lot of video work for weddings, but I had realized with cars, again, the ease of that, the stress wasn't there. And because the magazine industry was kind of starting to die out and everything was going digital and online, I thought maybe I could make a name for myself doing short automotive stories. Mm-hmm. So I developed a brand and started telling car stories with local people who were building really interesting cars. And that's kind of how I got into video in the first place.
That's awesome. And you've been published in a magazine for your work with car photography, correct?
Yeah, I think I only have 5, but yeah, I think there's five different magazines internationally that I've had automotive photo work done in. So pretty proud of that. That was kind of on my bucket list when I first got started. And
I was gonna say only 5. That's awesome. That's really sweet. So when did your love or your interest in light painting, what we're gonna get into a little bit later today, how did that start out? Like, was it from the cars? Was it from a specific shoot that you did that kind of clicked and you were like, oh wow, I want to try more of this? How did you get into light painting?
So another guy that was kind of a mentor when I bought my first digital camera had shown me early on. He's like, you know, you just set your camera still and you do a longer exposure and you just walk around with a light and you can create these really crazy cool images. And so he kind of showed me how to do that. I got a couple photos that I thought were just incredible at the time. I look back at them now and it's like, there's definitely a learning curve there. They're not the greatest images, but I was so proud of them at the time. And I wanted to know more because I didn't understand what I was doing. He was setting everything up for me, and every time I try and replicate it, like at my apartment out in like the courtyard, the pictures were terrible. So I realized like I need to figure this out. And so that's when I kind of started to learn manual mode on the camera and play around with that more. And when it came with cars, I was already pretty well versed with manual mode because I had to learn all that before I could do wedding photography.
Oh, sure.
But with the car end of things, it's just anybody can take pictures of cars. And you know, some people's pictures are better or more interesting. A lot of it's timing, a lot of it's lighting, a lot of it's location. But what I wanted to do was capture cars in a way that nobody else really was doing here. Mm-hmm. Light painting is huge all over the world, especially with cars, but there weren't really people here in Wichita doing it. And I thought this might be a way to differentiate myself. And as a big fan of the early 2000s, I think it was a PlayStation game, Need for Speed 2.
Oh, fire. Yeah, I love that game.
Yeah.
That game was awesome.
Great soundtrack, great vibes. It was such a cool game. You know, I grew up with the Fast and the Furious franchise was coming. It started when I was in high school, so I loved that scene. I wanted to try and create that energy and feel and images of cars at night. And so that's kind of, I thought, well, I'm going to figure out how to do this light painting thing, and watched other photographers online over the years that were mentors, and that's kind of how I took that path and ended up really kind of focusing on mostly night photography with cars at this point.
Yeah. Wait, can you, sorry for being naive, but can you do light paint? You can't do light painting during the day, right? Like it has to be dark.
Yeah, pretty
correct?
much.
Okay. So, yeah. I mean, that's exciting that your interests just kind of collided there and you're like, all right, this works perfectly. I've seen some of your work before and I think it's really cool just in terms of light painting in general, specifically with your car work, how it like almost looks like the slipstream of the car, or it gives like motion and movement to a stationary car, which is absolutely insane to me. So like you do such a great job. Would you mind if we got a little bit more into light painting?
Yeah, sure.
Sweet. So what are some pros and cons and some potential difficulties that you've experienced maybe early on and that you switched and were able to take care of and make your art even better in light painting?
Sure. So first, I mean, just so that people are aware, like with light painting, it's really just kind of what it sounds like. I mean, you set your camera, like the key thing is put your camera on a stationary object so it's not moving. So you could use a tripod, you could use a desk, you see like a tire, laying on the ground, and really anything that'll hold your camera still, you set that down. And then you want to be able to set like a longer exposure. Give yourself at least a few seconds to walk around with a light. Some people just draw shapes. Some people light objects. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. But the biggest difficulty is, as you kind of pointed out earlier, you can't really do it during the day. Like you need kind of a low light environment so that you can leave that shutter open and so that that light that you're using makes a difference and kind of creates the look that you're going for. So your biggest struggle is really you either need to wait until it's dark or you need to have a location that's dark that you can control all the lighting and create the image that you want. And that's also, for me, that's kind of the pro too, is you create this dynamic look that like you just can't get without off-camera lighting. And some people use strobes or camera flashes, and it creates kind of a similar look, but like the streaks, like the slipstream type look that you're talking about, those clean lines can really only be achieved either with a really, really large softbox over your object, or a continuous light source as you walk by and make a pass.
Sure, and that's what you've done in the photos, at least I've seen, right? Okay, I think I remember you mentioning that to me. Well, that's exciting. So for someone just starting out, do they need an expensive camera? Could they do it with their phone? Like how much expertise would they need and equipment in terms of light painting would they have to have access to be able to like successfully do it?
Sure. Yeah, I think most phones at this point offer a manual mode, or there's apps you can download to give you manual control. That's, at that point, if you can manually control your phone and set it to give you like a multi-second exposure, 3 seconds is usually about the shortest time I do because you got to be able to move, and 3 seconds goes by really quick. But a manual mode on a phone, you can absolutely use a phone for light painting. And then your light source, I mean, it can be as simple as, a lot of people starting out will just use the flashlight on their phone. And that's actually powerful enough that as you're moving around, you can create shapes with it. It works great.
Sure.
You can go bigger. You can get like one of those nicer like projector light flashlights that gives you a lot more power. It's harder to control though, so it can be tricky to get the images that you want. And it goes all the way up to, multi-$100 lights that you can change the colors on them. But again, like there's just a lot more creativity if you have the money to spend on stuff like that. And if you don't want to spend that money, you can even buy cellophane and wrap it around a flashlight to get different colors.
That's what I was going to ask about. Do you have a preferred color, or how do you typically switch colors? Obviously, cellophane is an option, but do you, at this point, I assume you have your own separate lights for those colors?
Yeah, so one of the things that I have that I really like, and it's super old at this point, is I have a light stick that is programmable. And with the app, with this, you can open an app and you can change it to any color on the rainbow.
Oh, cool.
And it'll show you that color, or you can just fine tune it manually on the light. So like right now I've got green because the last project I was doing, I wanted a green light. But I mean, it really is like you can just, you can do blue, you can start to add in other colors. There's more of a purple look. So yeah, I mean, there are these lights out there, and this one's one of the cheaper options at this point because it's probably 10 years old. But yeah, I mean, there are newer ones that are even brighter. It's just crazy with technology what all you can do with these lights. But this has been my go-to for like all of the published work that I've done has been this light, and these are like $80 online. They use the really common Sony batteries, the NPF batteries. So, a lot of people already have batteries like this laying around if they do video work because they power off-camera lights anyway.
Sure. That's very exciting. So when you hold that one, since you've done a lot of work with it, are you having to hold the handle and like go a specific direction, or do you like to move it around and rotate and try to get those kind of more unique shapes out of it?
My style is a little more clean and precise when I'm painting an object. I like to keep my lines really simple and clean, and it's kind of a more polished look. A lot of people will do like the crazy shapes, I mean, they'll just wave it around, and then the effect that you get it's super cool. It almost looks like graffiti, but with light. That's not really my style. I've done it a little bit, and it kind of depends on what the client wants, like whoever I'm working with. If they want that style, we can create some stuff like that. The nice thing is with digital photography, we can do it over and over and over again to get the look you want. And with light painting, like if you make a frame you don't like, you just don't use that one. And you can also, through Photoshop, just say, well, I like this piece of that frame, but I don't like how it affects this side of the image, then you just don't use that side. It's so selective thanks to technology that you can really refine your process and create some really cool stuff.
Nice. Speaking of the process, how do you plan for these projects? Like I'm assuming since the objects have to be stationary in these, do you just plan it around the object? Like, okay, I want this light to go down right here at the windshield, or like, how could you explain a little bit about that? Because that part is complex to me, or in my head, I feel like it would be really important to plan that out ahead of time.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, with cars, you kind of have a checklist of angles, and there aren't really wrong angles. You can get creative and do stuff that you haven't seen people do, although I think just about every angle of a car has probably been captured at some point. But you know, there's always that side profile shot, which is one of my favorites because it's the easiest to get, usually. I mean, you can do that in 1 or 2 passes and you get a really nice, clean result. You can also walk behind the car and do like the graffiti, the waving the light around and changing the color as you go if you have an app to do that, and get kind of a cool rainbow effect in the background. But I have kind of a mental list in my head before I go into every shoot of, I need, you know, these 4 or 5 angles, and then everything else is just kind of like, it's just extra, you know. It's like I want to get some cool shots of the engine bay because they've dressed up their engine, or if they have an air ride system in the back or a stereo system, I want to try and capture those details, wheel details as well. But yeah, I've got that checklist. My key thing that I usually focus on before a shoot, since it's always at night, is a location that looks interesting at night. It's not too bright, obviously, because I need that darkness.
Sure.
But it's not completely dark, because I also like to try and light my subject in such a way that it looks like it could be lit by a light that's in the area.
Gotcha. So do you, with that same, or along that same vein, do you use ambient lighting in your light painting, or is it better to just kind of create your own in a way?
I absolutely will use like some ambient frames. Before I get started, I usually take a few frames of my subject where it's almost just a silhouette, but you can see streetlights in the background, kind of lighting little pockets of areas to create interest in the image. That way it's not just a few lights in the background and then it's just a pitch black image with a lit vehicle. Like, I try to capture a little bit of ambient. In fact, a lot of times I'll stand just outside the frame, hold my light up, and kind of simulate like a street light as throwing a little bit of light on the ground and kind of creating a shadow with the car, because that helps sell the idea that, okay, this would make sense if this car is lit.
Sure.
A lot of times when you first get into this stuff, you get so excited about lighting the vehicle and how cool it looks, or just any object. It creates this UFO effect, which is exciting at first, but then when you realize you want to refine your process, you think about, it doesn't really make sense.
Sure.
So
I'm already coming up with ideas to give my 2012 silver Ford Fusion some underglow or something, you know. That would be pretty cool. Probably not, actually. But something we're going to do today is we're going to try to light paint around this little baby Groot. Yeah. I like Funko Pops, and this is mine. So James asked me if I could bring an object we could light paint around. So I brought this guy, and then a colleague of ours, Amy, brought some plants as well. So is there going to be a difference in light painting either of these objects, or because they're relatively the same size, it's going to be kind of easy and just like basically going around it?
Sure. It is and it isn't. I mean, with glass is just constantly, you can even kind of see here, since there's windows around us, glass is constantly reflecting things. And so you kind of have to be careful how you move your light around there, because a lot of times you'll just get a streak. And in this case, because we have an object inside of the glass, if you want to be able to see that, you have to be really careful as you're lighting, because you don't want that light streak to cut down through there. You won't see what's in it then.
Sure.
So yeah, with glass items, that's why cars can be so difficult.
Yeah, with the
sometimes.
windows.
Yeah, the windows and just the paint reflecting street lights and things like that, trying to keep that really clean line so that you have control over the outlook. But yeah, and then with objects like this, with Groot, I mean, he's matte. So a little bit of light thrown on him, he's just going to look great.
There we go.
It's much
Perfect.
easier
Yeah,
to work with.
I'm looking forward to seeing how my Groot looks with the light painting for sure. Well, do you have any other details that are pivotal to beginners or even people who are well versed in light painting that I haven't, or that you already haven't covered that you would like to?
Not really. I mean, I think just for anybody who's interested, you just need a camera that you can control manually. You need like a tripod, and you need a light, and that's really all you need to get started. And it can be, you don't need to be lighting cars at night in front of fancy places. You don't need to be lighting, glamorous products or anything like that. You can just have fun. You can just draw with your light and kind of understand. I'm one of those, like, I need to do it to really understand it people. And so I think a lot of people are that way. And as you do more of this and you test things and you see, it's like, oh wow, there's a lot of possibilities of what you can do with this. You can have a lot of fun doing different types of creative imagery, but you got to try. And so as long as you can get a hold of a tripod or a box to set your camera on, you've got a phone with a flashlight, and you've got a camera or a phone with manual mode, you're good to go.
I'm excited to see what the end result is, especially if we might do something like an NU or maybe even a jet we've mentioned. So I'm very excited to see, because especially with nothing to guide us with that, I'm very intrigued to see what the end result is like. Well, would you like to try it out?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
We're now in the small studio space that we are using, the Jabara Black Box Theater here on campus. And I'm going to try and go through just a couple different methods, show you kind of a couple different light options that we kind of discussed earlier in the interview to show you how to do some light painting. We actually have a camera set up right over here. You can see that's the camera that we're going to be using to capture our subject. You can see it's on a tripod. It's a little bit of a fancier setup with this thing on top. You don't actually need that. Most cameras have a built-in remote function, so you can just connect right to your smartphone, which is what I'm using for a flashlight right now. And so with that, you can control everything with your smartphone to take the pictures remotely, which makes it a little bit easier when you're trying to do light painting. The key things you need: dark clothes so that the light doesn't pick you up when you're taking the picture, a tripod for your camera, a camera, and then a light source like I've got here on my phone. All right, so we've got our flashlight. Jack has graciously agreed to let me borrow his phone so we can use it as our lighting source on this. So I'm going to go ahead and hold this over, and for this shot, we're just going to do kind of just a top-down light just to kind of see how this looks. So I'm going to hold that steady, and I'm going to take that picture real quick, and we will just go ahead and put that picture up on the video for those of you who are watching so that you can kind of see what the effect is when you do that. Turn this over here, and so that's the picture that you can see there. You can see there's a little bit of light kind of shining down in the bowl, a little bit of detail. It's pretty clean. You don't see a lot of streaks. The glass is a little smudgy because we didn't think to clean it beforehand, but that's okay. This gives you an idea kind of what it would look like if you just had a top-down light over it. So the next one we're going to try real quick here, I'm going to shoot this at a slightly faster speed, and so I'm actually going to walk and hold this light straight over the top of my subject as I light it. So if you just want to watch, taking that picture, walking right over the subject with my light, and that is what that picture looks like. It's a little bit more dim than the first picture that I shot where I just held the light over it. That's to be expected because we weren't focusing all the light in one area through the whole thing. So in that case, if it is too dim, you can kind of open that aperture up a little bit so it absorbs a little bit more light. And I'm going to do the same shot again. Come back over here. Again, I'm holding my light straight over the top of my subject. So I'm going to take the picture, walk right over the top, turn my light off so I don't get anything lit that I don't want. And as you can see, now that one's a little bit brighter. So you can just kind of play around with your settings. That's a lot of what light painting is. Light painting is really just, it's a lot of trial and error with how you do this. Maybe you take a longer picture, maybe you take a shorter picture, playing with your aperture to make sure that you get exactly the look that you want. So one of the other things that we talked about was different light sources. And so I actually have a real flashlight over here, which is going to be quite a bit brighter than the iPhone was. Sorry. That is one of the pitfalls to doing this in the dark. Sometimes you don't see everything. So what I'm actually going to do with this is I'm going to light from the front to kind of show you why you don't usually light paint from the front with glass. So we'll go ahead and take this picture, and I'm just kind of moving this light around in front just to kind of get a lot of light on that whole plant. And in that photo that we've got there on the screen for you, you can see it really accentuates like all the the smudges on the glass. There's a lot of reflections that you just don't want. It's really just not a great look. It's not very clean. And that's the advantage to when you're doing this with glass or anything highly reflective. Trying to light at an angle that doesn't just accentuate the source of the light, but it kind of shows you the subject that you're trying to light, which in this case is we want a little bit of the detail on that jar, but we also want to be able to see the plants inside of that. If I go over here, I'm going to grab my other light source, which was the light stick that we had talked about. Get that turned on real quick. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to walk with this light over the top. We'll take the picture, see how this turns out. All right, taking that picture. Turn my light off. Now we'll get that picture up on the screen for you to see. And as you can see there's a lot more light spill. You can see, some of the background lit up with that because the source is not quite as confined and directed as it is with a flashlight, where it's kind of focusing it all forward. But you get a lot of great light there. There's light on the table that we've got this set up on, and there's some good detail in the plant itself. In this situation, it's probably a little bit too bright. So I'm going to make another pass, going right over the top of our subject again to keep that light just over the top to avoid any reflections. Taking the picture, going right over the top. Turn the light off after you've cleared your subject, and then we will put that shot right up here on the screen. As you can see, that's a little bit better. It's not as blown out. We have a little more focus on the jar, a little bit on the table, but you don't see the things that you don't want, like maybe the background in that situation. Again, this is a great opportunity to show you how you'll get really bad light streaks, especially with a light source like this wand, because it's so big. I'm just going to light paint from the front and show you again those reflections. If you do that light painting from the front, you're going to get some really, really harsh reflections. They just don't look great, as you can see right there. It's not really a clean look. It's not what anybody wants. So one other thing that I do want to show you with this setup, because I have a light here that we talked about has some color, I am going to use a background color here. And we will kind of set this up. I'm just going to crouch off to the side of the frame and hold this light down below our plant. And then I'm going to take a picture and just keep the light real steady right there. We've got that up on the screen now. You can see there's kind of a nice blue glow behind our subject. And if you use software to put these together to try and kind of create a little more of a refined image, when you do that, what you're going to get is a little more ability to kind of hone and craft the image. In this case, I'll show you right now what it looks like if I take one of those that's got the nice soft lighting across the top, the blue backplate. You can see it's kind of a cool artistic choice. You can achieve this effect again with like cellophane, or sometimes you can put like a sheet of plastic, like those cheap folders from like the dollar store. You can use stuff like that to kind of cover a flashlight to get kind of a cool effect with a different color. So I think next what we're going to do is we're going to move to a less shiny subject. We'll try the Groot that Jack brought earlier. We'll show you kind of how that looks when we light paint that. So we've got our next subject here. As you can see, we've got this super cool Funko Pop Groot that Jack has agreed to let us use. One of the things I like about light painting things like this is that this is more of a matte finish. It's not that glossy finish. So you can really do a little bit more with your lighting and not catch too many nasty reflections that you don't want in the image. And so we'll start kind of the same way that we did before. I will just hold my light right over the top here. Maybe a little bit more in the front. And again, you can have this light as low as you want, as long as you're not blocking the actual camera. So take that shot really quick, and we will put this one up on the screen. As you can see, we've got pretty good lighting there. It's a little dark underneath his chin, but it's a pretty solid shot. Good color, good light, not too many distractions. You can't really see the background, which is kind of what we wanted for that. I will bounce straight to lighting behind him, but instead of using a colored light this time, we will use just the iPhone light. Okay, I'm going to take that shot. And so what you end up with there, as you can see, is kind of a nice silhouette shot. There's a little bit of light on the wall behind it. Can't quite make out what you're looking at there, But when you combine it with that first shot, which is now on the screen, you can see you've got some nice light on the Groot and on the background. It's kind of a cool product shot. Another thing we should try with this, let me grab our light bar this time. And I'm going to walk right over the top again, maybe just a hair in front. We'll take this shot and we'll see kind of the difference when you're moving with the light on an object like this. So I'm walking past, light over it, turn it off once we clear our subject. It's a little bit more bright here again because this light bar has more power to it than like your usual iPhone flashlight will. But another thing I'll show you, since this isn't glass, we can light it from the front and we won't get any nasty reflections doing that. In fact, I'm going to light it kind of a little bit lower from the front. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the light slowly. So we'll take that shot and I'm just holding the light here, but just kind of pivoting it in a circular fashion, turn it off. And again, that creates kind of a different look. You get a lot of light on your background, which may not be what you're going for, but it does create kind of another dynamic look. And because we have this one where we can control our color, let's pick a different color. Maybe a nice green. I think that green will look good. So we'll throw that green behind our Groot here. And we will take that shot and see how that looks. And so this is kind of similar to that shot that you saw earlier where we put the iPhone behind it. But it's a little bit brighter because, again, this light output is a little bit brighter. That's kind of a cool, like, another like a product reveal, like what's it going to be. When we layer that shot with the forward shot that we took earlier, what we end up with is really kind of a cool product shot that's got like some nice light on the front so you can see the true color of it, but on the back you've got kind of that cool green color, which goes really well with Groot since he's a tree. So I think that's it for this. The one last thing I did want to show you was how to do some light drawing. And we're just going to do that with our phone. It's a little bit easier to control that way. I guess I'll bring my flashlight up here so you can see me. The last thing I wanted to show you is how to do maybe like just a little bit of light drawing with something. Super simple stuff. I'm just going to draw a stick person first. Just kind of show you how to do this. It's pretty easy to do. It can be difficult if you don't use a regular flashlight where you can easily click it on and off. Since we're using an iPhone light, that might be a little bit tricky, but if it is, we can try with a regular flashlight too. This is just kind of show you, it's not as hard as you probably think. You just need to have somebody just fire the camera for you or have a remote to do that. So, got my remote ready, got my light ready. I'm going to point this way. I'm going to start up top for the head. So here we go. Draw the head, come down, legs, back up, arms. And then I'm going to block that light out, and we'll see right up here on the screen. You can see how that turned out. A little bit of a stick person there. Could be better. I don't do a whole lot of lighting like this. I usually light subjects and not light drawing, but I think that turned out pretty well. So I think another example we can do, let's try the NU, since we're here at Newman University. See if we can knock that one out. So let's start over here with my light. Here we go. Up, down, up, over, and then here's our U, and then I'm blocking out that light. And now we're going to put that up on the screen so you can see. Again, it's super simple. There are cleaner ways to do that. Again, if I was using a regular flashlight, when I finish the N, I could turn it off, move over like I did, turn it back on so that that N and U isn't connected. But for just a quick run, that's pretty cool. It's kind of a neat look. Maybe what we'll try now, we'll bring our light wand over here and I can play around with some colors. Let's do maybe red. All right, perfect. So we've got some red here. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and draw with this stick, and I'm going to turn it off between each shape as I do it to try and get a pretty concise NU out of it. So here we go. Up, off, down, off, up, off, and then the U. All right, put that up on the screen. Not too bad. The U is a little bit crazy, but trying to control something like that, I think it turned out pretty well. So Jack, since you are on right now, running the camera for me, is there anything you would like me to try, or would you like to try one of these?
Try a flower, or I can try a flower, whichever one works.
Okay.
You're the pro. You can do it if you'd like.
All right. What color would you like to see that flower
Let's
in?
make it a color we haven't done. Let's do blue.
Blue?
Yes.
All right. Let me swivel this around. Push up our blue. Okay. So a flower. So I'm going to come down here. Now, what kind of flower are we thinking? Like a sunflower, or just like kind of maybe a similar plant like is in the jar? That kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. Let's do something like that.
Like that? Okay. All right. So here we go. So we'll go up, down, up, down, up, down. And then we'll put that up on the screen. See how that looks. Probably a little bit crazy. Not quite as refined. Almost looks like fire, actually. So that's kind of a cool look. Very interesting design. Another thing we could try with a light like this, we talk about being able to change the colors on it. So one of the things I'm going to do here is I'm going to play with adding some color as I walk by the camera. And I'm just going to kind of move it up and down to kind of create like a graffiti type pattern. And I'll change color as I go through. So here we go. And that should kind of show you kind of a bluish, purplish streak there. Kind of an interesting color. If we were outside in a totally dark space, we didn't have maybe all of the stuff that's in here with us, it would probably be a little bit easier to see the creativity behind that, and not just kind of the mess that's on the floor. But again, this is kind of our makeshift theater space, so we are at the mercy of that. But that kind of gives you an idea, different things you can do when you're light painting, whether it's glass objects, trying to stay away from doing it in the front because you don't want those nasty reflections, or the matte objects like the Groot, getting kind of those product type shots, or lighting from the back to get kind of that unique silhouette type look. Or you can just have fun and light paint, just light draw people, logos, different items like that. There's a lot you can do, again, with just the flashlight on your phone, a small cheap flashlight from the store, or if you wanted to, you can look at light sticks online that have different colors that are programmable. You can really do a lot of cool stuff.
Well, everybody, you just checked out the Newman Bond. James got his camera right here. We're going to check out the edited pictures eventually. I cannot wait to see how they turned out. So be sure to tune in to the Newman Bond every first and third Tuesday of the month, and check us out throughout the year. Thanks for watching.
I was like, what? I have no idea.
I get a lot more blessings out of it.
Really fun experience.
Really, the Newman